Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. It is launch day for block number 6 in our 2025 Sew With Me series. So we're on block number 6, which means we're halfway through with our Sew With Me series. I hope you are all enjoying it so far. If you've missed any of the videos, don't worry. They will stay here on YouTube, and you can also find them on a playlist I've created on my homepage. All of the free PDF patterns and everything will be linked below this video, along with a blog post with all the fabric requirements and everything you need for this sew along. So let's go ahead and take a look at today's block. I think you're gonna like this one. This one is block number 6. It's a little bit different, and I thought it was kind of fun, and it also comes together really easy as well. I'm gonna be showing you a few new techniques for today as well. So let's go ahead and get started with today's tutorial. Okay, let's do a quick recap of what we've made so far. So here was block number 1. This was block number 2 with the bow sashing. This was our backing block. We made that the same week. We added the label. Here is block number 3, block number 4, and then last week, or last video, we made block number 5. And this block might look a little familiar to you. This is inspired by my Lucky Layer Cake quilt. We did an entire quilt of these blocks, and it's so fun. If you haven't seen that one, highly recommend checking out. It is a free video tutorial here on YouTube. Okay, that's all the blocks we've made so far. Let's go ahead and start with today's block, block number 6. We're going to start off with our flying geese units, and we've done this before, so we're just going to do a real quick review. We're making them one at a time for this unit. So we're going to take one H square and 2 D squares. We're going to draw a line, diagonal line from corner to corner on the wrong side of our D squares. We're going to place a D square on our H and just sew right along that line. We're going to trim 1/4 inch away from our stitch line and press. We're going to take our other D square, place it on the opposite end of the H, and then sew, making sure that that diagonal line is going in the opposite direction. Again, we're going to trim off 1/4 inch from our stitch line and press. We're going to trim this down to size, and we're going to be making 4 of these flying geese units. Next, we're going to make the half square triangles for the corners of our block, and these are going to be using the C and J units, and we're making these 4 at a time. And I apologize, my video stopped filming, but I am going to insert some video on a previous block that we've made. So we're going to place our 2 fabrics right sides together. We're going to sew around all 4 sides. When we're done sewing, we will cut that square in half diagonally in both directions to make 4 half square triangles. I'm going to press all of my half square triangles towards the dark, and we're going to be making 4. Now we're going to work on the center of our block, and so we're going to be making a 9 patch unit, and then we're going to snowball the corners. So we're taking our 4 E squares, our 4 F squares, and an I square, and we're going to sew those rows together. So we'll sew the top row, the middle row, and then the bottom rows together, and then we'll come back and sew those rows together to create our center unit. I'm going to press all of my rows towards my red fabric so that my seams nest when I put those rows together. All right, now we need to trim this down to 5.5 inches, and I did give you extra because 5.5 divided by 3 isn't exactly a happy number, and so I just made the blocks larger, and then we're just going to trim it down to 5.5. And I apologize, my video was not filming at first, so I've already trimmed these 2 edges, but what I did was I just used my diagonal line, and I just make sure we're going corner to corner right here on our center block, and then you should have about 1 7/8 inches on each side of your seam. So if we look at our ruler right here, we've got 1 inch, and then each of these little lines is 1/8 of an inch, so you've got 7/8 of an inch. You don't have to be quite that specific. Just make sure that you've got your line going corner to corner on your center square, and then you're going to be trimming off about 1/8 of an inch of extra fabric all the way around. I already trimmed these 2 sides, so now we're going to turn our square and again line up now the 5.5 inch line right there, and you can see we have just about 1/8 of an inch on our other 2 sides to trim. So you'll be trimming off about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. All right, and then our last thing to do is to take our 4 G squares. We're going to place them on all 4 corners. I've already drawn a diagonal line going corner to corner on those. We're just going to place them on all 4 corners, and so it should be looking like this. Make sure you take a look at the graphic in illustration in the pattern, but you just want to make sure that your diagonal lines are oriented like this so that you're basically snowballing those corners, so it makes this inner section look a little bit like a circle. Your blocks are a little bit smaller than these, so they won't go all the way to the edge. So don't think that you cut these too small. You didn't. I like to pin these in place so that I can take this whole unit over to my machine and just sew all 4 of these all at one time. We're going to just sew right on that line. We'll come back, trim 1/4 of an inch away from our line, and then trim up the center of our block. All right, we need to just trim this down to 5.5 inches square. And then also, if, for example, this side's a little short and I have a little more on this side, I might even just scoot it over so it might not be absolutely centered, but at least when I trim it down, it'll be the right size. All right, so we've got our center piece done, and now we just need to lay out our block. So we're going to lay out our flying geese first. They're going to go this way for this block, and then we're going to put our cornerstones down. We're just going to sew our top, middle, and bottom rows together, and then we'll sew those rows together. Now this block actually has a lot of flexibility, so I just thought I would show you just for fun, but you could turn your flying geese units the opposite direction and have more of a circle pointing in and get just a completely different block. So there's a lot of flexibility with actually most of these blocks. You can rearrange the pieces and get something totally different than what the original pattern had it laid out. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the original pattern, sew my rows together and sew those together, and then all we have to do is add our outside pieces and we'll be done. All right, so I've got our top, middle, and bottom rows sewed together. Now because we have so many seams here, you could either press this out and this in. That's an option, or you can press everything open. I'm going to press my middle unit out and these top and bottom in and just see what that looks like on the front. And if those are laying nice and flat, then I'll probably keep it that way. So I'm going to go ahead now and just place these right sides together. I'm gonna pin at these intersections. My seams are gonna nest because we pressed them in opposite directions. Okay, and in my pattern, I do tell you to press this open. I just don't feel like doing that right now, so totally up to you. I'm gonna sew along both these edges 1/4 of an inch. All right, and here is our block. Our last step is to trim down this center piece to 10.5 by 10.5, and then we'll come in and we'll add our side borders B, and then our top and bottom borders A. All right, here is our finished block. Of course, I trimmed it down to 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches, and that is our finished block number 6. So let's take a quick peek at my stitching progress for blocks 1 through 6. Here's block number 6, which is the one we're doing today, but it's nice to just see them all coming together like this in our cross stitch piece. I hope you guys are enjoying this one. Here's all my floss. I've showed it for each block so far, so I'm sure you're quite familiar with it. Now that I've done this many blocks though, I did want to give you a little update on my opinions on this floss. So I think overall, this floss has been fine to stitch with. I do feel like I've had a little more issues with this floss either knotting, or sometimes I'll get like a bird's nest on the back and I'll be stitching along and I won't notice, and then all of a sudden when I go to turn it over to weave in my ends, I see that there's a bird nest, and I've had to pull out several different ones because that happened, and I don't know if it just was I wasn't paying attention. However, that doesn't usually happen when I'm using my DMC floss. Like that happens every now and then, but it's almost like this floss is a little rougher, so it catches maybe on itself or something. I'm not 100% sure. It also could totally be me, but I've just been having a little bit more of a hard time stitching with this floss. I have noticed some of the variegation coming out a little bit, and I'll zoom in to show you. So I don't know if you can see here, but this little corner and this little corner and a little bit of this are a lot lighter, and then it starts moving into the darker pink here. And I started stitching in this corner, and I stitched this little corner, came up, did this, and then started moving around. And so I think that's why you can kind of see where that variegation starts happening. And I did stitch these. I stitched up 3 and then down 3, up 2, down 2, and then just this little one by itself. So I don't know if that process makes it a little bit more obvious, but it's definitely starting to show up a little bit more, mostly on the pink. I still haven't noticed it as much on these greens or the red at all. The red looks pretty solid in person as well, but even this green, you can see some variegation in the skein, but really not too much when I'm stitching with it. It's mostly just been this pink that has gone a little bit to white and then back to pink while I'm stitching. And I think if you look at the floss, you can see it as well. So it's a little bit darker pink on these strands and a little bit closer to almost a white on the sides. So you can see some of that variegation coming out in this pink. That said, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. I like all of the colors. It is a little bit of a moodier color than the DMC floss picks, so I think you can just pick which one you like better. But I do like it. I think it's going to be really cute when all is said and done. I'm starting to think of ways to finish this. If you have any ideas, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear some of your finishing ideas. This is a little bit of a Christmassy version. That's what we're doing with my quilt as well. And if you're doing a cross stitch and a quilt in a different color, I would love to see or hear your color schemes. But that's it for our update for our stitching for blocks 1 through 6. All right, that is it for block number 6. I hope you are all enjoying this year's sew along. Don't forget to join us in our Sew With Me Facebook group where everyone is sharing their fun makes and progress. And I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. That's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying our sew along, and I will see you next month for block number 7. So let's take a quick update. So let's take a quick peek at my floss. And then we're just going to sew our top, middle, and bottom rows together. Whoops, this one's wrong. Phew, close call.